Welcome to Ditch Auto. My name's Jared, and today we're going to talk about the Loxia f2 35mm from Zeiss. This is a lens that I picked up and have just fallen in love with, but also have become frustrated with. And it's not because of the lens, it's because of me. So let's talk about this lens a little bit. Of course, I have my A6500 sitting next to me as well, which is a camera that I'm using this lens on quite often. So, and this has another lens on it, which we'll talk about in another video. But nonetheless, this manual lens, this is a fully manual lens. It does have, electrical contacts so that it can communicate to the camera, so that your data from the lens, whatever's being written, the EXIF data can be written to the image. So that's good. It also recognizes focus zoom assist, which is an option to where when you start to focus, the camera actually zooms in, I believe like 3x, and it gets you much closer, so it really helps you focus. And I found that to be a feature I can't live without, because when you are shooting fully manual and you're doing anything other than shooting landscapes, like, you absolutely need some sort of assistance. And so I find myself turning on focus assist, which is typically a feature of a video, and allowing that to help me keep things in focus, but also using that magnification that happens automatically when you start to adjust focus manually. Now, those things aside, and there's a learning curve. If you've never shot with a fully manual lens, it's going to be a bit of a learning curve, because we rely so much on autofocus, and autofocus has become so good. I mean, autofocus is fantastic in a lens like this lens, and these cameras have just gotten so good at it. So why on earth would you want to go to a manual lens that takes away those amazing autofocus features that the cameras have? Well, let me tell you a couple of reasons why. The first reason is that it makes you think. I have not had to think so hard when going to take a photo than when using a fully manual lens. And this is not the first fully manual lens that I've played with. I have been kind of toying around with other lenses, some like vintage lenses that I've adapted to my camera. And then I had a 50mm 0.95 aperture lens that I was playing with a little bit too, that of course is fully manual. But I wanted something that would still give me the data, that would still give me the camera features to help me and kind of give me the assistance when manual focusing, and this lens does that. So Zeiss makes some beautiful glass, and I've talked about Zeiss glass before, with some of their other lenses, the Batiste line of lenses that go on these Sony mirrorless cameras. And, for those of you that have Canon and Nikon, I mean, there's some beautiful glass that they make for those cameras as well. I mean, Zeiss is just known for producing just amazing pieces of equipment. And, this lens just looks really good. I mean, sure, I have a battery grip on my camera because I'm typically shooting for long periods of time and I need 2 batteries. But when I go out shooting just for fun, like street photography or whatever, I ditch the battery grip and go for a more compact unit because I want to be less noticeable. And when you have a battery grip on the camera, you do look more like a professional. Now, if you take this lens off and you put it on the A6500, which is a much smaller body, it starts to make more sense because the lens is kind of small. It's not a very large lens. It doesn't need all of the extra real estate, all the extra size and heft to autofocus and all that stuff. So this lens here is just perfect for the A6500. It feels good. I mean, it's a smaller barrel of a lens, so there isn't as much to wrap your hand around as there is on a lens like this. But it just feels really good. You've got your focus ring here. It just feels really nice, nice grip to it, and is just easy to use. And then, of course, with that manual focus assist that's in here, and then the magnification, those definitely help in that process. We also have a manual aperture ring, which means you're not going to be adjusting your aperture on the camera. You're going to be adjusting it here using the ring. And it does have click, and I believe it comes with a little tool that allows you to disable or declick the lens, so that way it doesn't have the clicking feature. If you were going to shoot video, you might want to do that, because obviously the clicking is something that your camera would pick up audibly, and then also the clicking may result in a little bit of movement just because of the clicking, and also the stepping of you adjusting that aperture is going to be more noticeable because of the clicking than if it was completely smooth. So the lens, 35 millimeter, it definitely is a great field of view on the full frame. It definitely steps up a little bit on the crop sensor, such as the A6500, and adds a little bit more zoom or a little bit more of a distance than the lens would natively, but it still works great and produces fantastic images on this camera. The f2 aperture is extremely wide, and it just produces the most beautiful fall off of any lens that I have. I mean, of course, some of these lenses do a great job, but it's just so creamy, it's almost unreal. And it's to the point where in some situations you can't even use it. In a photo I'm showing you right now, there's a photo of our puppy, and there's part of our house, and there's a hose in the background. And there's some things in this image that are just so creamy that they look fake. It looks like a painting. It looks like there's a picture of a dog and then there's a painting in the background. So you almost have to find yourself kind of stopping down a little bit and maybe changing some of your other settings so that way you have a little bit more focus. But there are certain circumstances where this lens just sings. It's beautiful. It produces amazing photos that are sharp and just it's a lens that I just can't live without. And that's really a strong statement for me to make, because with shooting on the Sony platform, I have all of the G Master lenses. They're amazing lenses. They cost a fortune, and they are just great. I mean, the autofocus, everything about those lenses is great. They even produce great video. I mean, they're great lenses. But for lenses that I want to use when I want to think more, I want to be more involved in the photography process, I definitely aim towards using this Loxia lens, and I may even go and pick up another focal length because it's just such a nice lens. The challenge is that it's not with the lens, it has to do with what I'm typically taking pictures of. I have 3 young kids, I have a puppy now, I've got things that move in my life, and shooting with a manual focus lens definitely adds a bit of a challenge to that. Now, I tend to, even with autofocus lenses, tend to take a more manual approach with my focus. I'm always shifting the focal point around on the back of my camera, which is telling the lens where to focus. So I'm still using a portion of autofocus, but I'm telling the camera specifically where to focus. But with this lens here, being fully manual, that's what you have. You have your eye, you have to be in the moment, and you have to act fast, especially if something's moving. And so it does become very challenging to take pictures of moving objects. Typically, you wouldn't go and buy a manual focus lens to take pictures of moving objects because it's a little bit more challenging. You would rely on autofocus. But if you want something a lens that's just going to completely engulf you in the photography process in taking a picture, and you can't really think about anything else because all you want to do is get that shot, a manual focus lens such as this is kind of a must-have, and it in most situations renews my love for going out and just taking pictures because I really have to think about it. I can't just point and shoot. However, it adds that level of frustration because I can't use it in all situations, and I wish that I could. So is it worth the money? It definitely is worth the money. I wouldn't make it like one of your first lens purchases unless you really want to go in that direction. But as a photographer who's been shooting for a lot of years and just doesn't feel challenged with his equipment anymore, because I really don't, the equipment's so good, having a manual focus lens that is just a beautiful piece of glass, a nice, well-constructed lens that is solid, that is small. Like, this is something I can pack up. When I take off the lens shade here, it's a very small, I mean, sure, it's still bigger than maybe a pancake lens or something, but it is a very small lens, and this is non-threatening. I can carry this around just like this, and people don't think that I'm a professional photographer. People don't think that I'm trying to take their photo. It's just a more simpler setup, and you get a beautiful glass, a beautiful image out of this lens, and it's a small package, and all of those things I really like. So I find myself carrying this lens with me almost all the time because of those facts, because I can just look kind of incognito in comparison to maybe anybody else who's carrying a much larger camera. Like somebody's carrying a camera like this, they're expecting that photo is probably going to be, published somewhere. This just looks like a hobbyist that spent a little bit of extra money, and I like that. I like having that look. I'm done with the gotta have a big camera because that's what makes people think I'm a professional. I want something small and compact that is powerful, that does the job, gets me fantastic images, and this Zeiss Loxia lens 35mm definitely does that. So those are my thoughts on it. I showed you some images. I talked about the lens a little bit and about how I use it. If you want specs, if you want all of the nitty-gritty details, definitely check out the link in the description below to where you can check this lens out. I ordered it off of Amazon, got it here the next day via Prime, and got a good price on it. So I have zero complaints. It's a lens I'm going to keep in my bag for quite some time, even though some other lenses don't typically make the cut because they just don't add enough of a difference. I mean, if you've got a 35mm and you've got different variations of 35mm lenses, like what is there to differentiate them besides little features? Whereas this one differentiates itself by being small, by being very agile, by producing fantastic images, and by being priced decent. Sure, it's a little bit more expensive of a lens, but it's definitely not as expensive as like a G Master line or something like that. So check out the link in the description below. If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel. Make sure to check out some of the other things that we have going on here, and we would love to have you in our Facebook group, which is the Ditch Auto Facebook group, where we talk about photography, share photos, and just photography life together. So make sure to check out that link, which is also in the description below, and we'll see you next time here on Ditch Auto.